What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Lock and Cash podcast. It is the evening of Monday, November 3rd, but you'll probably be watching this on Tuesday, November 4th, as we look ahead to week 10 in the NFL season. Week 9 Sunday is in the books. For me, week 9, I didn't really have much to react to. I'll spend a minute or two here in this video with my thoughts on what happened Sunday. For me personally, 1-3 on Sunday. That ended a 7-day winning streak for me. So between last Sunday and Monday NFL, college football throughout the week, the World Series throughout the week. We won Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then we got Saturday. I'm like, all right, this is eventually gonna, nobody can win for this long. So it was a really great week, and then we get to Sunday, ended up 1-3. So 1-3 is not the end of the world, but it was a little frustrating, and I'll explain why. My win, 49ers -2.5. That was my winner. My loss, Kansas City -1. Got good CLV on that, of course, CLV, and they end up losing the game. But that loss I'm okay with. The other two are Bob. So I had two teasers where the first leg was already in the bag with the Ravens on Thursday night, the Broncos getting 7.5. So late in the game with Houston, it was a done deal. They were going to cover the 7.5. So I've got those two teasers pending, and the last leg for both of them was the Lions -2.5. So it really just needed a Lions comeback, some kind of magic at the end of that game, and they couldn't give it to us. So what would have been 3-1 if the Lions were able to squeeze out a win ended up being 1-3. So you live with those, it happens, but that was a tougher one because the Detroit game was particularly ugly. And we'll just talk quickly about Sunday. Like the two big upsets happened with Detroit, with the Minnesota and with Carolina. But the Detroit, yes, it's a divisional game, but it wasn't a particularly bad spot. Like the Vikings had extended rest and they had an embarrassing loss in prime time. But the Lions also had extended. They were coming out of their bye, a good solid win. They were getting healthier on defense, and they just looked really flat. And the concerning part is that they got bullied at the line of scrimmage. That's the part that bothers me about that game in particular. I don't want to overreact to anything, but the fact that Minnesota was able to get so much pressure on Goff and really disrupt his timing and his rhythm, that was concerning. Because, Detroit, you do a few things well. You run the ball really well. Your offensive line is phenomenal, and you've got playmakers all over the field and at all the skill positions, right? The one thing there is that you got to give Goff time to throw the ball. If he doesn't have time to throw the ball, it's almost like their whole offense falls apart. Like, just all collapses. And they couldn't run on Minnesota, who was a bad rushing defense. So that was a little weird. It was just one of those weird outlier games that tends to happen more in divisional games. Like we saw the 49ers upset the Rams early, like as a 9-point dog in a divisional game earlier in the season. So that kind of stuff happens. Just a weird one for Detroit. I do think they'll bounce back, take care of Washington next week, especially now with the Daniels injury. But just a little weird to see. Now that one, it's not like it is surprising, but it's not like, oh my God. It was kind of like a little revenge spot for Minnesota, the way they ended their season last year. The second one, though, Carolina over Green Bay, is totally unacceptable if you're the Packers. The Packers, man, you just wasted a loss that the Lions got to another team in your division by not being able to beat Carolina. Like, great teams just don't do this. I don't get it with Green Bay. They've got all the metrics of an elite team, a Super Bowl contending team. But great teams do not do this. You may struggle to cover that game. You may trail for most of that game. It might be sloppy, but a great elite team does not outright lose that game. Crazy outright loss as a two touchdown favorite at home. Insane loss by the Packers. To me, they're one of those teams where if you look at them generally across the board, sharp sources, handicappers, info sites, whatever it is, a lot of people will have the Packers top 5 in their power ratings. Man, to me, they just don't pass the eye test. The numbers are all there. The coach is good, defense is good. You got the stars, the names, the star power, the brand. But when I watch them play, they just don't pass the eye test. There's something off about that team. So a little weird there. The other one that I want to react to, the Chiefs, just a bad game from Mahomes. I rewatched it. He had so much time to throw on many of his dropbacks and just couldn't find anyone open. He's looking downfield. He's like, what? And he looked a little indecisive too, which is weird. They just never got into a rhythm. Like Buffalo seemed ready for whatever they were trying to do. And because they were ready for it, it kind of like disrupted the next sequence. Like the flow was just never there. Never. I will say once they converted the 2-point attempt and then it was 28-21 and then they get a stop and they get the ball back. And I'm like, here we go. This is what he does. This is why you bet on Mahomes. But the typical Mahomes magic just wasn't there. So I'm okay losing that bet. If you're going to give me Mahomes less than a field goal, I'll take it every time. And I'm okay losing it if he just has a bad game. Just had a bad game. That's it. It's going to happen, and I think they'll bounce back. But um, we'll see. We'll see. It's tough for them because Denver and LA both won, so now the division gets that much harder for Kansas City. All right, let's move over to week 10, guys. I do have 3 releases out already for week 10. So if you're a sub, you've already got those this morning via email. They're posted on the site if you go log in and check it there. I probably have more throughout the week because I really love the board. I'm just kind of waiting to see. First of all, I want to see if we can get more value on a couple lines. And second of all, the trade deadline's tomorrow, so you got to be a little careful with that. But if you're interested, there's deals. Lockandcash.com is the website. There's deals down below. Look, link in the description, all that stuff. All right, let's get to Thursday Night Football. The Raiders taking on the Broncos. Denver -9 to 9.5 at home. 41.5 is the total. Very interesting spot here for the Raiders specifically. Not much to talk. I'll talk a little bit about Denver, but the Raiders played an overtime game at home against Jacksonville, and it was I mean, it's funny that game had like no points in the first 3 quarters, and they combined for 31 points in the fourth quarter. Anyway, game goes to overtime. The key here is they played the full overtime. They played the full 10 minutes of overtime. That's the important part of this because that's a lot of extra football on your body. And the Raiders score in the end, and I thought correctly went for 2. You don't play for the tie there. Your season, you're already 2-6 or whatever they were, 2-5, whatever. So they go for the win. They don't get it. So they lose. Very tough loss. But the situational spot here is really bad. You play an overtime game, and then you have to travel. But not only do you have to travel on a short week, you're going to Denver in the altitude on a short week against a team that plays really well at home. Tough to beat the Broncos at home over the last couple of years. I saw a stat the last 20 times a team played overtime and then traveled for Thursday Night Football on the road, 3-17 against the spread. That's pretty undeniable. That's a crazy stat. So that one's really, really tough on the Raiders. Obviously, this is likely baked into the line as it is a massive point spread, 9.5 points. Denver, really tough, gritty win at Houston. A little fortunate that Stroud gets injured. It looked like the Texans were trending towards winning that game. The one thing I want to say about Denver here, they can't continue to do this thing where they coast through 3 quarters and don't show up and look very flat and then just pull it out in the fourth quarter. We saw this. We've seen the story many times, but most recently, the 2023 Eagles. You guys remember that team who won like 10, 11 games in a row to end the season and then get knocked out in the first round of the playoffs? We saw this last year with the Detroit Lions. 15-win regular season, bounced in their first playoff game because this type of play is unsustainable. You're coming back, allowing teams to build leads in front of you, relying on fourth quarter luck and magic. You're not always going to be able to come back. You're not always going to be able to get that stop. You're not always going to be able to nail that game-winning field goal. So for me with this Broncos team is like, yes, very impressive 6-game winning streak. Probably will win this game and make it a 7-game winning streak. And now you're looking really good in the AFC West. You're probably going to be 8-2 after this game. But man, you cannot keep doing. They need to button up the first half of these games because playing from behind is a recipe for disaster. And there's some clutch factor to it, but it's a lot of luck, and you don't want to have to rely on luck, or you want to have to rely on it as little as you possibly can going forward. So even though Denver continues to win, I think it's a little bit risky what they're doing. And the Raiders here just are, the season is lost. They're obviously going to play it out. I'm not saying they're dead by any means, but this is just a tough. The offense did look much better though with Bowers back. I will say that. Much more juice to the offense when he's on the field. All right, moving over to Sunday, we'll start with the Atlanta Falcons headed to Indianapolis, taking on the Colts. Colts -5.5 in this game with a total of 48.5. Both teams coming off of tough losses. Indy actually started that game pretty well against Pitt, up 7-0 with the ball, but couldn't convert on their drive there. And then it just kind of all started to fall apart. They get another stop, and then they get the muffed punt, which sets up Pittsburgh. And then they actually stop them, but then they get the fumble, the strip sack fumble by TJ Watt that's recovered. And then Daniel Jones throws an interception. And then before you know it, you're down, you're somehow go from being up to down double digits at the half. So really tough stretch. They couldn't recover from it. I think you just kind of saw a bit of the limitations for Indy with Daniel Jones as their quarterback. He's having a really good year. It's not that he's bad or anything like that. I think he's proven that he's a serviceable quarterback, but everyone's suspicions of like, this can't continue. Daniel Jones is going to eventually do this. That. I think you're kind of starting to see that that is true. You got a glimpse of it there on the road in hostile environment, outdoors, right? Kind of got a glimpse of the whole thing. Now they return back home for this game. So on the surface, it's like, okay, great bounce back spot for the Colts, especially if you do really believe that they're a legit contender and an elite team. So then this would be a great bounce back spot at home for them, a place where they haven't lost in a very long time. I can't remember the last time the Colts lost at home. Problem for me in this game, though, is Atlanta is in a much more desperate spot now that they lost that game. That was a brutal loss. A game that in hindsight, you rewatch it, which I did, they had a lot of opportunity. They should have won that game against the Patriots, man. Hold the Pats, which have been an electric offense for several weeks straight now. You hold them to 3 points in the second half, and you can't come away with the win. You missed the extra point to tie the game. Really tough loss for Atlanta. And just one of these spots now where it's like, man, you don't have much more room you don't have any margin for error basically now. If you're the Falcons, you got to win this game. So to me, on the surface, yeah, it looks like a cold spot. When you dig a little deeper, you realize Atlanta needs this game way more than Indy does. And I expect them to play like it. So I do lean I know these are two, the Colts specifically can be very, very potent at home offensively. But I do think this game lends itself to the under in a game with Bijan Robinson and Jonathan Taylor, especially with how both of these teams performed last week. I think they'll go back to what they do best, which is lean on the running game, and I could see both teams having success on the ground. So a little lean to the under in this one, and a slight lean to Atlanta. Although I have no action on this game, and I don't think that I will unless this line takes like a dramatic move upwards. There is a 6 out there. I would need 7 though to play on the Falcons in this one. All right, the Browns are headed to MetLife to take on the Jets. Jets -1.5. We're seeing some 2s pop up now. 36.5 is your total. Crazy low total in this game. It's a little perplexing to me. Like, I understand the Browns defense is good, but we just saw them get torched by the Patriots and that game went over. And with how bad the Jets defense has been, I'm just not, this total seems low to me. Now, there's like an old adage with handicapping, like if the total is suspiciously low, then play under. If it's suspiciously high, play over. I'm not really into those things. Like I just lean slightly to the over in this game. I think this could be one of those games where the second half has most of the points. Listen, the Browns have been brutal on the road, man. I mean, but the Jets have been equally brutal. I mean, you know what I'm going to say. This is just one of those games where I wouldn't touch it. I wouldn't touch this game with your money if you gave me it to bet on it. So, you want to try to convince me that Cleveland is safe in teasers? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. But the Jets are coming out of the bye. Maybe they fix some things. Maybe they look a little better. They haven't looked terrible offensively at times with Fields. The Browns defense is obviously very good. Myles Garrett will definitely cause a lot of issues in this game. High variance game that I want no part of with the low total and a low spread. It's just, I think you're basically flipping a coin with this one, and I don't see an edge on either side. I would make this game Jets -2. So I can't get involved on this one. I will say that I just lean slightly to the over here at 36.5, by the way, because that's a key. Remember, 20-17 cashes you an over at that number. That's why I'm saying 36.5 to the over, not 37.5. If you can get a 36.5 flat -110, I would lean over in this game. Next one up, you've got the Saints taking on the Panthers. NFC South divisional battle. Carolina is -5.5 in this game, and the total is 40. And a very unusual role for the Panthers. They're not usually favored in NFL football games, but they will be in this one. Listen, Shuck is really bad for the Saints. The Saints are a very, very bad team. They're not, I think their coach is good. I think they have potential. They're obviously not going to, I'm not going to say they're tanking, but you don't want to win games right now if you're the Saints, okay? You want to secure the top pick in the draft and move it on. Carolina is in the fight for a playoff spot. So these are two vastly different scenarios. With the Panthers sitting at 5-4. Yes, they should win this game. Do I want to suddenly lay a near touchdown with a team that just last year couldn't win any games? I don't think I'm there yet with the Panthers. I make this game 5 in my ratings, but um, I just that's the lean for sure. Lean Carolina. I do think they win the game, but I can't get to the point where I'm like confident enough to say like, yeah, Panthers minus 5.5. I just can't. Like I could see this being a game that ends on a field goal. It's a divisional game. If anyone is trying to prove themselves, it's Tyler Shuck for the Saints in this one. So it's just one and Carolina just pulled off an upset as a double-digit underdog. So that is a historically negative EV spot to go ahead and run and chase and back of that team. After they just did that, they might be a little overvalued in the markets. I think you could I mean, if this is north of 6, which it's trending that way, I think you can make the argument that Carolina would be overvalued in this game just based on the fact that they upset the Packers and are now above 500 for the first time in a while and all that stuff. So, um, but at the same time, I can't tell you I lean Saints here. So I would probably lean Panthers maybe in like some money line parlays, but I'm not touching this game. You know me. You know if you've been watching enough of these podcasts, you kind of know my style right by now. That once we got to Cleveland Jets, I'm not going to bet that. I'm not going to bet Panthers Saints. I try to avoid these high variance spots. And listen, I'll get involved on gross teams, no problem. If I really like, I told you last week, guys, that I leaned heavily to the Raiders plus the 3.5, and I got really close to taking that. But I want to just try to limit that as much as I can. And this is definitely a game where I think anything could happen and it wouldn't surprise me. So probably a pass for me overall. I will say with a 39.5, man, some of these totals this week. I know weather is going to start to become a factor, but we're seeing a lot of offense in the NFL this season. So 39.5, I would slightly lean over at that number in the game between the Saints and Panthers. All right, the next one up is the Bills headed to Miami to take on the Dolphins. Buffalo minus 9.5 now, up from the initial 8.5 on the open. 50 basically is the total across the board. These two teams have already played this year. Buffalo was I think it was a 12-point favorite at home in that game on Thursday Night Football earlier in the year, and the Dolphins did cover, but they lost the game straight up. This is just a big fat number to be laying on the road with the Bills. The last time they had a number like this, obviously they covered that blowout against the Panthers. They could certainly blow out the Dolphins again. Miami's in really bad shape on defense, but again, the Dolphins will be on extra rest. They got to stay home. Yes, they got pounded by Baltimore in that last game out, but that was a desperate Ravens team that was just getting back Lamar, that needed a win to keep winning. Buffalo, I mean, it's going to be there's going to be very few instances ever where I come on here and tell you to lay more than a touchdown on the road in a divisional game. It's just not something I do. Whether it's the right side or not, whether I see value on it or not, I don't really see much value on this one. Below 8, I would have saw value on this, 7.5 or less, but at this price, I can't get involved on Buffalo, and I don't really want any part. At 10, I would have to say that I lean Miami at 10. Because remember, this is all just numbers, guys. This is all math. Like one of the things that people get wrong is that like you're picking teams and then like betting on the team because you like the team, and the matchups certainly play into it and all that stuff, and like personnel and all that. But at the end of the day, it's price. So if there's a game that you can go either way on, just depends on what the line is. So if this was like 7, I'd bet Buffalo. If this is 10.5, I'd bet Miami, because there's a good chance this game lands on in between 7 and 10, right? So slight lean at the current number to the Dolphins, but not running to get involved in this one either. I do think the Bills will win the game. But again, this is one of those games where it's, like I said, divisional game on the road. You already beat them once. Would it surprise anybody if this is a close game late? If this is within a touchdown late? No, right? We wouldn't be surprised if this game ends like, 31-24. Nobody would be shocked by that. So just be a little careful. You kind of lost the opportunity to tease Buffalo down to -2.5 because the 9.5 is up now. You could maybe do a 10-point teaser, but then you're basically taking the money line. You might as well take money line in a parlay. So Buffalo should win this game. I think this week in particular, you're safe from any of the big, like last week, I did say that the Rams and the Packers were pretty much auto wins The Rams took care of business, but the Packers did not. So I'm not going to use that term anymore. I'm not going to say auto wins anymore. But I do think that the biggest favorite on the board this week, which is Buffalo, is safe to not get upset. But we'll see what happens. All right, next game up, the Jaguars taking on the Houston Texans in Houston. It's right now Texans -1.5 with a total of 38.5. Obviously, the big story in this one is CJ Stroud, who took a big hit in that game against the Broncos, suffered what was, I thought, a clear concussion. In protocol right now. We'll see if he plays. TBD. If he doesn't play, it's backup Davis Mills for the Texans, who actually came in and did not look horrible. Yes, the offense struggled, but he wasn't. You didn't prepare with them the whole week and all that stuff. Like, it's different when the backup comes in mid-game versus when you have time to prepare. So I do think the Texans will be ready for whatever they have to do. But to me, this game in particular, is just all about the spot and their opponent. Because I think the Jaguars stink, dude. I've been saying this for weeks, and I faded them against KC. I got burned for it with the stupid 99-yard pick six. I faded them the next week in Seattle. That worked out. The Rams, they killed them. And now they come out of their bye. They should have lost that game to the Raiders. You can rewatch it. I rewatched it. They should have lost that game. If Vegas converts that 2-point attempt at the end of overtime and wins that game as upsets as a home dog, what are we looking at here today? Because this line was at 3. The look ahead was -3 with a healthy CJ Stroud. And at that time, I made it -4. So I was already waiting. I have to, obviously, for our subscribers, I have to send something that's widely available. So I was being patient. I was like, if Houston -3 is still there, I will fire on it. Now you're getting Houston -1 with the in-between of like, will Stroud play? Will he not play? Guys, I don't think it matters. Jacksonville's not good. They're 5-3. It's very, very misleading, their record. I don't think the first time these two teams played makes me love this even more, because it was a very low scoring defensive grind when Houston had nothing going for them on offense at that time of the season. They looked like the worst offensive team you've ever seen, and it was on the road. And what happened at the end of that game? Houston was driving with a chance to win it, and they should have won it, but they make a play. Nico Collins gets a nice catch, and then fumbles the ball, gives the Jaguars the game. But if he doesn't fumble that ball, I know I'm saying a lot of ifs, but if he doesn't fumble that ball, they win that game, clearly, with their defense. With their defense now at home, and I was watching that Broncos game, like, rooting for the Broncos to make that comeback because I want to fire on this spot the following week. They lose. Now they need 3-5 versus 5-3. You're at home. It's a pick 'em spread. The Jaguars offense they're going to give Lawrence fits in this game on defense. This is the best defense in the NFL at home. And whether or not Stroud is in, I just need them to win the game. I like Houston in this one. So I'm very strong on Houston in this particular spot. I think the Texans will beat the Jaguars, whether it's CJ Stroud or whether it's David Mills. I love this matchup for them. All right, next one up, the Ravens taking on the Minnesota Vikings. Baltimore was initially -3 on the road in this game, now up to -4. 48.5 is the total. JJ McCarthy, solid game back for the Vikings. Did he do anything crazy to beat the Lions with his arm? No, he threw for like 140 yards. But they did what they had to do. They win the game. He did make a big throw late to ice it on that third down where the Lions could have got the ball back and things would have gotten very dicey. So props to him. He makes the throw. They convert. They kneel out the game. Lamar came back. Looked like he didn't miss a beat passing the ball. Passed the ball phenomenally against the Dolphins. Didn't look as mobile, but now he's going to have more time, extended rest indoors in this game. I think he's going to look great. I think the Ravens roll here. I'll be honest. I really do. The Vikings, that was a divisional game. And I talked about it earlier with the Panthers. Teams that pull off those big upsets, touchdown dog or more, they tend to come out flat the following week. That was a huge win for the Vikings to kind of like get their season, to try to save their season a little bit here, because they were reeling after that Thursday night game against the Chargers where they got blown out. But the Ravens need this game just as bad and arguably way more. And they are fully healthy on defense against a young rookie quarterback. You've got, I think, a coaching edge on your side. You've got the better QB. You've got the better D. Henry is going to be a problem for this game because, listen, I said this on Thursday Night Football when we last week when we talked Ravens Dolphins. I said the Dolphins shut down Bijan on Sunday, right? Remember in Week 8? So it's what are the odds that they're going to shut down Bijan Robinson and Derrick Henry back-to-back games in the same week? And it didn't happen. Derrick Henry ran all over them, especially in the second half. Well, I'm going to say the same thing here about the Vikings. Jahmyr Gibbs, Gibbs and Montgomery, the best running back duo probably in the NFL, couldn't run on them. Really great game in the trenches. What are the chances the Vikings are going to stop Gibbs, Montgomery, and Derrick Henry back-to-back weeks? I don't think it's happening. I think this is a big game for Derrick Henry. I think Lamar does what he does normally with his scrambling, with his running, with his throwing. His passing has been unbelievable. Yeah, I just think this is a Ravens spot. I think they're going to win. I think they win by a touchdown or more. I get the angle of like a good home dog, Vikings as a home dog. But Minnesota hasn't been great at home. If you go back and look under Kevin O'Connell, they have not been a great home team against the spread, including earlier this season where they lost outright to the Falcons at home. So to me, all Baltimore in this spot. I like them in moneyline parlays too. I would lay 3.5. At 4.5, I think is when you're starting to push it a little bit. But I would lay 3 or 3.5 if you can find one out there. I think the threes are gone, but there's a couple 3.5 still out there. So I like the Ravens to keep on winning. They've now won 2 straight. They got to keep winning. They're way behind. So big game for Baltimore. New England taking on Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home -2.5. 48.5 is the total. Another team here, the Patriots, who I am starting to profile similarly to the Broncos. So I talked about the Broncos earlier about how they're squeezing out wins. The Patriots have not been necessarily squeezing out wins, but they are on a long 6-game winning streak now. And my favorite acronym or joke for the NFL, as you guys probably have heard me say before, is that NFL stands for not for long. And no winning streak can last forever, especially now that the Patriots are in the unfamiliar role of being a dog. Yeah, right. They did pull off a big upset at Buffalo this year. Excuse me, but you now come into this game having survived a game against Atlanta that was a desperate team that needed to win, where it clearly looked to me like the Pats just ran out of juice in the second half. They appeared to be running on fumes a little bit, 3 points only in the second half. The defense held up, good job, but they didn't necessarily do it against an elite offense. And the Falcons still scored a game-tying touchdown, just missed the extra point. Otherwise, who knows how that game ends? The way it was trending, I think Atlanta would have won it if they tied it. So you kind of fortunate to escape with that game if you're New England. Kayshon Boutte, hamstring injury, looks like he may or may not. I would say if you have a strained hamstring, you're probably not going the next week. So they might be down a key weapon. But the bigger matchup here is that Tampa Bay pass rush, which is very strong with those guys up front, Vita Vea in the middle, especially in the middle, against this Patriots offensive line that is trending downwards. Okay. The Pats now, Drake May is now second most sacked quarterback in the NFL, only behind Cam Ward. So this is becoming problematic. 6 sacks on Sunday against the Falcons, who do have a good pass rush. Tampa Bay has a good pass rush. They have a good defense overall. They stop the run really well. So this is going to come down to May's arm, I think, on the road in hostile environment on a 6-game winning streak. I mean, it's got to come to an end at some point, right? The Buccaneers are coming out of their bye after they got beat up by the Lions. That was an ugly loss. They need time to regroup, rest, come back. They're going to come back out, I think, that really needing a win here, especially with the way Carolina's playing. Carolina, right? Like if Carolina is a 2-touchdown dog in Lambeau Field, you're expecting them to come out of that game being 4-5. Now they're 5-4 and they're right on your heels for the division. So Tampa Bay, I think, is going to come out juiced up, ready to go, playing and a good defensive coach in Bowles playing against a younger quarterback. You know what Baker does. Maybe that we haven't heard anything yet, but maybe get Bucky Irving back. I think he's missed like 5 games now. He's got to be coming back soon, but we haven't heard anything yet. So there's still injury questions on the Tampa Bay offense, but I'm not super concerned about that side of the ball. I think Baker will do what he does, and they have enough to manage. My angle for this game is more so their defense against this Pats O-line and harassing May in this game, who looked very different in the second half of that Falcons game. Once they started getting pressure, everything changed. They couldn't score. They couldn't move the ball. They couldn't score. So I think you can see something similar here. I do think that this is the week the Patriots win streak comes to an end. So I like Tampa Bay in this game minus the 2.5. All right, the Giants are headed to Chicago to try to stop the bleeding. The Bears minus 3.5 at home, 48.5 is the total. Bears now 5-3. Same record as the Detroit Lions, only behind the Green Bay Packers. Same amount of wins as the Packers. Man, the NFC North is getting very, very interesting with Chicago. A game they probably should not have won. It's hard to say that they shouldn't have won it, though, because the team on the other side, like I can't really say the Bengals should have won that game. Both defenses were horrific. This is one of those games, guys, where the mark, it was -3 for the Bears. It went up to 3.5. Their defense is so bad. I think Dart can do some things in this game. I really do. I think he can give him some problems, and it's young QB versus young QB. Like, there'll be some juice there. There'll be some, like, motivation for Jackson Dart. At 3.5, I lean Giants. I don't think I've said that all year yet. And I just faded the Giants with the 49ers on Sunday, but I like the Giants. I think the Giants could win this game for sure. And that just might be me not being sold on Chicago. And more so that than like being high on the Giants. I'm not high on the Giants at all. Their defense is also very, very bad. But they're more of like a run funnel. Like they did defend the pass okay. They especially like the deep ball. Like Mac Jones was kind of just killing them on the short stuff, which they've been doing really well. But the Giants could defend a little bit, but up front they get destroyed. The Bears are not really going to like run the ball down your throat. Like I could see the Giants pass rush and front really messing with Caleb Williams in this game. I think that's what I'm trying to get at. Am I really saying it right? I could see like Brian Burns and those boys up front, Thibodeau and Carter. I could see them giving him a hard time in this game, and forcing him to make some mistakes, particularly. And then on the other side, the Bears defense is just brutal, dude. It is so brutal. And yes, Jackson Dart doesn't have all the weapons that Flacco has. He's not going to sit there, have 20 years of experience and sling it all over the field. But he, even in the game against San Francisco, he made some great throws. A lot of his passes were dropped. There's some stuff to like about what he's doing. So, man, I just can't get over 3 and the hook for the Bears to be laying that kind of number. I lean Giants. I'm not saying I'm going to play it. I haven't played it yet. I do lean Giants, though, in that game. The Cardinals taking on the Seattle Seahawks. Not much to say about this one because we've got to see how Arizona pans out tonight with Jacoby Brissett starting, and we don't know if Kyler Murray will be back next week. So a lot of uncertainty in this game. Seahawks are -7 currently, but I will say the Seahawks, that Sunday Night Football performance, man, they look so good on offense. I mean, this was the Vikings last year though with Sam Darnold. They looked elite on offense for 17 weeks, and then it all came apart at the end. Not to say that that's going to happen again, but this Seattle team, I love the way they're playing on offense. I love that defense. I love the coach. There's a lot to like about the Seahawks team, man, and they are so good on the road. They're now 11-1 under McDonald on the road. Basically, anytime they're on the road, they're almost an. I mean, we've taken advantage of that a couple times this year, but they still haven't lost. I don't believe on the road, and they've been so good in these games. Like, yeah, they upset Pittsburgh on the road this year. They beat the Jaguars as a small dog. Now the Commanders, they've been nails away from home. But laying this big number at home, it's a full touchdown. I don't know. Like I said, we have to see what happens with the Cardinals quarterback situation, so I can't comment too much on this game. Detroit is headed to Washington to take on Marcus Mariota and the Commanders. Lions -8.5 or 9, depending on where you look here. This was 7.5. As soon as Daniels got hurt, it was bought up, understandably so. 49.5 is the total. I do think this is a big bounce back game for the Lions offense against the Commanders defense, that you saw how bad they actually are against the Seahawks in that game. The Lions, I think, will put up a ton of points in this one. You probably know the trend already. They're 12-0 straight up and against the spread after their last 12 losses. So off a loss, they're on a 12-0 run. Will that continue in this game? I think so. Just can't get involved with such a large spread, but I do think that they'll win the game. Moneyline parlay piece, this is probably the strongest one of the week. Even though there's a bigger favorite on the board with Buffalo, I do think this is probably the strongest moneyline parlay piece because you got the backup quarterback. You got a defense that's slow, banged up, not good to begin with. You got a lot of speed on the Detroit side. They're awful lost. They're going to come out with their hair on fire. This is one of those classic Dan Campbell routes, and Going to look, I think, similar to what you saw with the Commanders on Sunday Night Football. I saw a lot of stuff about not about Dan Quinn not having should not have had Jaden Daniels in the game at that time. I'm not a big believer in that. I mean, you can get injured on like any drive of the game. The first drive of the game, you can get injured. These guys are you're out there to play football. To me, and it's his first game back from injury. It's like maybe use that last drive to build some momentum, some rhythm, a group, try some new things. I can't go crazy for the guy getting hurt just because he's in the game in a blowout at the end. It's a bit different in football. It's not like basketball where if you have your star in with like 30 seconds left, and you're up by 20, and then he gets hurt. It's a little bit different in football. So I can't go crazy over that. It was unfortunate. It kind of basically puts the kibosh on their season. Even though Mariota's a serviceable backup, but this is gonna be a tough matchup for him, especially Detroit coming off the loss. The fact that it was a divisional game, the fact they were a big favorite got upset. They go on the road now. Yeah, I think this is gonna be an ugly game. So definitely lean Lions in that one. Okay, Rams are headed to San Francisco to take on the Niners. LA minus 3.5 on the road. 49.5 is the total. I've got a big TBD listed here. We don't know if we're going to get Brock Purdy back for this game. Doesn't matter. I don't know. They're winning games with Mac Jones. I'm not really sure what else. Even the Houston game, they were never really like totally out of that game. And that's a great defense. So obviously the big thing here, though, it is a quote unquote revenge spot. The last time these teams played, it was earlier in the year, but the Rams were at home, Thursday Night Football, -8 or 8.5, I think it was. And they lost outright. The Niners pulled off the upset with Mac Jones. Now the Niners are home dogs with Mac Jones getting 3.5. If you take that, if you listen, that spread, that -8.5, kind of accounted for the fact that we didn't really know how good they were going to be with Mac Jones offensively. It was kind of like, oh, the backup's in. It also accounted for the fact that their defense back then was a lot healthier than it is now. Believe it or not, I can't even believe I'm saying, like, they just cannot catch a break with these freaking injuries on defense. Their offense, though, is a lot healthier now than it was in that game, which is the weird part. Like the Rams defense in that game kind of just got dinked and dunked to death the whole night by Mac Jones throwing to Kendrick Bourne, if you remember. But they didn't have Kittle for that game. They didn't have Juwan Jennings for that game. The big thing with Kittle back specifically is not so much that he's going to just throw the ball to him like 10, 50 times. It's the fact that he's such a great run blocker. It improves their rushing attack with McCaffrey and with Brian Robinson. That's the key with Kittle. So you could maybe see that come into play a bit in this game. I make this like north of 4, though, to be honest with you. So I do, even at 3.5, see a little bit of value on the Rams. It's probably a game I won't get involved in, just too much uncertainty. And if Purdy is back, the spread's going to move, and then you don't know how he's going to look. Does he re-aggravate? Is he fully 100%, or are they bringing him back because it's such a big game? Like, I don't know. A little too much going on here for me in this one. Even though I was on, like, my bet on the Niners on Sunday was more about their opponent, right? About the Giants. Like, if you can't handle the Giants with the type of team that you are, with the coaching edge, quarterback edge, defensive edge, like, that would be concerning. But they did a good job against the Giants. This game, though, I'm not running to back them, even as a home dog against the Rams. Very, very tricky one. Yeah, so I'll probably end up passing on that game. But it's worth noting, though, like I said, I make the line north of 4, so I do technically see a bit of value on LA ATS in that one. All right, your Sunday Night Football game is the Steelers taking on the Chargers in LA. Chargers -3 is the spread. We're starting to see 2.5s pop up. That surprises me, to be honest with you guys, because I was texting about it earlier this morning. It's like I see a little bit of value on Chargers -3. Obviously, the Joe Alt injury really, really hurts. Since he's come back, like, this is the type of thing you have to do when you're handicapping NFL. Like, remind yourself, like reminding myself, man, when they didn't have Alt, they looked bad offensively. So now losing him again, it's just, I mean, it almost sucks. Like, I love the NFL so much. I mean, I love it. Like, I don't get me wrong, I like college football, but to me, the NFL is like in its own. I love it so much more. It's like my main thing. And it just kind of sucks to see like so many injuries. I know it's a brutal sport, it's like a gladiator sport, but it takes away from these games week to week just a little bit, and it makes them very much harder to handicap with all the injuries. So losing Joe Alt's a big one. Now you got another banged up D line, TJ Watt on the other side, and all these guys. Pittsburgh is kind of healthier on that side of the ball. You finally saw, right, that their defense was getting gashed all year. And even to start that game, the Colts were moving the ball pretty easily, but then you kind of saw them wake up a little bit. get a big pick, get a strip sack. The juices were going for Pitt, and now on the road, this is certainly, don't get me wrong, certainly a game they can win. The Chargers are one of these teams that play up and down to their competition. Very beatable team, very winnable game here for the Steelers, even as a dog on the road. And by the way, the home field plays a very small factor in this game because it's the Chargers and they don't have a great home field, and there will be tons of Steelers fans at this game because they travel well. One of the best fan bases in football. There will be a lot of terrible towels at this game. So, you know, it's going down. Even though I make at 2.5, I gotta say I lean Chargers, but I don't love it, and I probably won't get involved in this one either. I know, kind of a boring week for me, but I did give you some spots. I will say my two favorite spots before we get to the Monday night game, which is one of the best games of the week. I will say that my favorite spots this week, definitely Tampa to end the Patriots win streak. Definitely Houston. I really like that spot. We just need to know if Stroud's playing and where the line goes on stuff. But if he does play, you maybe lock in some CLV now. I'd love that spot for Houston. I really like the spot for Detroit. I really like the spot for Baltimore just to win those games. And kind of like the Giants game 3.5 against the Bears. So those are the kind of the spots that I'm looking at. The rest, I kind of give you my opinions. I give you maybe some value for my power ratings, but I won't get involved in terms of actually betting money. All right, last game, Monday Night Football. The Eagles headed to Green Bay to take on the Packers. Green Bay -2.5, 45 is your total. A friend texted me right after the Packers lost and was like, because before that, this game was 3, guys. It was Green Bay -3. And he was like, Monday Night Football dropped to 2.5. We got to be on the Packers, right? And I'm like, I'm not so sure. You know, Philly's been making trades. They added 3 key guys on defense. They just got Jalen Phillips today, a new edge rusher now. I think I talked about this I think a couple weeks ago on the podcast, but the Eagles to me, and I'll get to the Packers, but the Eagles to me profile as this team, especially this year because they won the Super Bowl last year, a team that's not going to get up every week. All right. You saw it with the Giants game where they got upset. You saw it with the Broncos game where they led and then they let foot off the gas in the fourth quarter. They don't get up every single week because they're not that hungry dog that they were last year, right? They're now the accomplished, distinguished dog. Like they have the championship. There's nothing left to prove, really. But when it comes to teams like that, you want to try to pick and choose the weeks that you think they'll get up for. So the second game against the Giants, I was on them because I thought after getting upset, this is a game they're gonna lock in for. And it was at home and all that stuff. I think this is a game they lock in for. Going to Lambeau, a chance to play villain spoiler on the road. And the Packers, yes, it looks like a bounce back spot for the Packers. It really does. And you're laying less than a field goal at home with one of the best home fields. But I go back to my little rant that I did at the beginning of the video where do I want to take a team that I can't call the Packers elite. You lost to the Browns and Panthers this year in ugly fashion as double-digit favorites in both games. I can't call. So do I want to lay points at home with a non-elite team against an elite team? That's what you're asking me to do why take the Packers in this game. Like that law, you don't want to overreact to one game, but great teams don't lose those games. They struggle. Again, I'm repeating it. They struggle. They don't cover, but they don't outright lose them. That's the problem. Non-divisional, like I can forgive the Giants beating the Eagles. I can forgive the Vikings beating the Lions. I can forgive Mac Jones beating the Rams. You cannot lose that game, Green Bay. You can't lose to Cleveland and to Carolina. You just can't do it. You can lose to the Lions. You can lose to the Bears. It's just so much worse. So for me, it's like I now have this tag on this team as like they're not trustworthy. I don't know what I'm getting week to week with Green Bay. I know in this game I'm getting, I think, a Philly team that will be locked in. Jalen Hurts is throwing the ball really well. Their offensive line's playing better. Saquon is playing much better now. It's starting to show a little bit, the Eagles team from last year. And I think defensively, they'll cause a lot of issues in this game. Defensively. Jalen Carter, like I think this is a bad matchup for the Green Bay offense. And I think they can replicate some of the stuff that Carolina did on defense in that game. So I'm basically saying all that to tell you that I think Philly wins this one. So I like Philly, even though the spot says Green Bay. Everyone you might talk to would say bounce back for the Packers, bounce back, revenge for last year's. The Eagles knocked them out. I think the Eagles win this game, but I will say that I need three. I need that three to come back. So I'm going to be patient. I haven't bet it. I'm not taking the Eagles plus 2.5. So I'll be patient and I'll wait for a three throughout the week. Because if you see three, know that I will be on the three. So if you want to fire with me, if three minus 110, by the way, guys, price is everything. 110 flat. Not three minus 115, 120. For this game in particular, I need 110. If I get that, I'm on Philadelphia. All right. And that's how we'll wrap up the show this week. As always, guys, comment, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Let me know if you guys want me to talk about more stuff. If you guys want me to include more trends in the podcast, let me know. If you say, no, just talk about situational. I love the angles, the coaching, whatever. Let me know. Whatever you think. We're trying to improve this show week in, week out as we try to grow here on YouTube. So let me know. And as always, thanks for watching. I will catch you guys later in the week when we do the wrap up on Friday. So watch out for that. And I'll include a best bet in that video. Spoiler, I think it's going to be Houston. All right. Whether or not CJ Stroud plays, I really like the spot for Houston. But I'll catch you guys later in the week. Thanks for watching as always.